You've probably seen it all over social media. Seniors being turned away at airports, new passport laws that nobody understands. People are panicking, saying their parents or grandparents won't be able to travel anymore. If you're confused, worried, or just trying to figure out what's actually happening, you're not alone. I'm Saqib, and you're watching Global Immigration Updates, where we cut through the noise and give you the facts without the fear. So let's talk about what's really going on with this so-called new passport law for seniors in 2026. And more importantly, let's separate what's true from what's just creating unnecessary panic. First, let me be very clear. There is no sweeping new federal law in the United States that suddenly prevents seniors from traveling or using their passports. That headline you saw, that post your cousin shared, that video claiming everything changed overnight, most of it is either misunderstood, exaggerated, or completely false. What people are actually reacting to is a combination of existing rules that have been in place for years, some recent enforcement changes at certain airports, and unfortunately, a lot of confusion being spread online. Let me explain what's actually happening. The United States has had passport validity requirements for a very long time. Your passport needs to be valid for at least 6 months beyond your planned return date when you travel to many countries. This is not new. This rule exists because other countries require it, not because the US suddenly decided to target seniors. What is new is that some airlines and airport staff have become more strict about checking this rule, especially after the pandemic, because they don't want passengers to be denied entry at their destination and then have to fly them back. That costs the airline money and creates major problems. So if a senior, or anyone really, shows up at the airport with a passport that expires in 4 months, and they're flying to a country that requires 6 months validity, they might not be allowed to board. That's not a new law. That's an old rule being enforced more carefully. Now let's talk about Real ID, because this is another source of major confusion. Starting May 7, 2025, if you're flying domestically within the United States, you will need either a Real ID compliant driver's license or another approved form of identification like a valid US passport. This affects everyone, not just seniors. It's been delayed multiple times, but it is coming. Here's what that means. If your state-issued driver's license does not have a star in the upper right corner, it is not Real ID compliant. You can still use it for driving, but you cannot use it alone to board a domestic flight after May 7th. You would need to bring your passport instead, or you would need to get a Real ID compliant license from your state DMV before that date. Many seniors don't realize this because they haven't renewed their license recently or they don't travel often, so when they show up at the airport and get turned away, it feels like a sudden new rule. But this has been in the works since 2005. It's just finally being enforced. Now let's address the airport chaos part of the headline. Yes, there have been reports of confusion at certain airports, especially among older travelers who were not aware of these requirements. Some were told they couldn't board because their documents weren't in order. Some missed flights. Some had to scramble to find alternative ID. That's frustrating, and it's understandable why people are upset. But calling it a new passport law for seniors is misleading. These are documentation requirements that apply to everyone, and the so-called chaos is happening because of lack of awareness, not because the rules themselves are unfair or targeted. Let me also clarify something important. Your US passport does not expire based on your age. A senior citizen's passport is just as valid as anyone else's for the full 10 years it was issued. There is no special renewal requirement just because you turn 65 or 70 or 80. That rumor is completely false. However, seniors do need to be aware of the same rules everyone else follows. Keep your passport up to date. Check the expiration date well in advance of any trip. Make sure it's valid for at least 6 months beyond your travel dates if you're going internationally. And if you're flying domestically and don't want to carry your passport, make sure your driver's license is Real ID compliant. So who is actually affected by all of this? Anyone traveling internationally needs to make sure their passport meets the 6-month validity rule. That includes seniors, but it also includes everyone else. Anyone flying domestically after May 7th, 2025 needs either a Real ID compliant license or a valid passport. Again, that's everyone, not just seniors. The reason seniors are being mentioned so much in these headlines is simply because older travelers are more likely to have expired documents, outdated licenses, or less familiarity with recent changes. But the rules themselves do not single out seniors. Now, what should you actually do if you're worried about this? If you're planning to travel internationally, check your passport right now. Look at the expiration date. If it expires within the next year, start the renewal process. Don't wait until 2 weeks before your trip. Passport processing times can vary, and you don't want to be stuck. If you're flying domestically and you don't have a current passport, check your driver's license. Does it have a star in the upper right corner? If not, visit your state DMV website and find out how to get a Real ID compliant license. Most states make this easy. You just need to bring a few extra documents like your birth certificate or social security card when you renew. If you're helping an elderly parent or relative, take a few minutes to check their documents for them. Make sure their passport is current if they travel internationally. Make sure their license is Real ID compliant if they fly domestically. A little preparation now can save a lot of stress later. And please, if you see a dramatic headline about new passport laws or seniors being banned from flying, take a breath and check the actual source. Visit the US Department of State website for passport information. Visit the TSA website for Real ID details. Visit CBP's website if you have questions about international travel. Don't rely on viral posts or random videos that are designed to get clicks, not to inform you. Here's the reassuring part. Immigration and travel rules in the United States do not change overnight. There is a long process. There are announcements. There are delays. There are grace periods. If something major were actually changing for seniors or anyone else, you would hear about it from official government sources first, not from a random social media post. The current situation is not a crisis. It's a reminder to stay informed and keep your documents up to date, which is something we should all be doing anyway. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to Global Immigration Updates and turn on notifications so you don't miss future fact checks and immigration news. Share this with anyone you know who might be worried about these rumors, especially if they have elderly family members who travel. And if you have questions about immigration, visas, passports, or anything else, leave them in the comments below. I read them, and I'll do my best to cover them in future videos. Stay calm, stay informed, and remember, the truth is always less scary than the rumor.